What if the hardest stretch you've ever pushed through wasn't a detour at all? What if it was the road the whole time? Here's the thing nobody tells you. We assume that when something is about to break open in our lives, there'll be a signal, a moment, some flare in the sky that says the effort finally worked, the reward is on its way. But that's almost never how it actually happens. The stretch right before a real breakthrough usually looks, from the outside, like absolutely nothing. And yet, there are certain experiences, quiet, private, easy to wave off, that tend to show up in people's lives right before everything changes, not after they arrive, before. One of the signs I'm going to share doesn't look like progress at all. Honestly, it looks like the opposite. But by the time we get there, you might recognize it as one of the most important things that's ever happened to you. So, if you've been working hard and quietly wondering whether any of it is going anywhere, stay with me. You're not imagining it. That low hum of something moving under the surface, even when you can't point at one single thing and say, there, that's it. That feeling is real. It's the thing that keeps you up a little later than you meant to, staring at the ceiling, unable to explain why you still care this much. People who eventually looked back on the turning point of their lives describe feeling exactly this, in the months before it landed. What you're about to notice in yourself might surprise you. Sign number 1. You're more exhausted than usual. But not from laziness. This isn't the tired that comes from doing nothing. It's heavier than that. A bone-deep fatigue that doesn't quite add up. The kind that hits hardest on days you were sure you'd feel fine. The easy explanation is burnout. And sometimes, that's true. Sometimes you genuinely just need to rest. But there's another read worth sitting with. When you've been carrying real effort for a long time, your mind and body hold the weight of all that focus. And right before something finally gives, that weight tends to peak. Think about the last push before a summit. It's always the steepest part of the whole climb. So, the heaviness you're feeling? It might not mean you've gone too far. It might mean you're closer than your exhaustion is willing to admit. And here's what makes the next one worth watching. It usually shows up at the exact same time, and almost everyone mistakes it for plain bad luck. Sign number 2. Small things keep wrong. Plans collapse at the last minute. Little complications pile up. Stuff that should take 5 minutes suddenly eats your whole afternoon. You're doing everything right, and the friction just won't let up. It's maddening. It genuinely feels like the timing is designed to break you. But across a lot of different spiritual and philosophical traditions, this kind of low-grade chaos has long been noticed during real transitions. When the old structure of a life starts quietly rearranging to make room for something new, the disturbance leaks out in small ways first, long before it's visible in big ones. So, those irritations might not be walls. They might be proof that something underneath you is already moving. Now, the next sign happens entirely inside your own head. And strangely, it's the one people feel most ashamed to admit. Sign number 3. You're questioning everything, your path, your choices, whether the thing you've poured yourself into is even what you want anymore. When this starts, it's tempting to read it as a crack in your foundation. Usually, it's the opposite. Sustained effort burns through illusions. Stay focused on something long enough, and you start seeing it clearly, sometimes uncomfortably clearly. What's working, what isn't, what you actually want, versus what you only thought you wanted back when you started. That kind of honest reckoning doesn't happen when you're standing still. It happens when you're in motion. Listen to anyone who's come through a real turning point, and you'll hear this same chapter. A stretch of intense questioning, right before everything clicked into focus. Not a breakdown, a clearing. So, if you're asking sharper questions about your life than you were a year ago, that's not the warning you think it is. The next one is subtle. Most people don't even catch it until it's already done. Sign number 4. You've started letting go. Without forcing it. There was no big decision, no dramatic conversation you finally worked up the nerve to have. Just a quiet loosening, a habit that fell away on its own. Someone you stopped chasing. An old story about your limits that just stopped feeling true. This kind of letting go is nothing like giving up. Giving up is a struggle. This is what happens after you've already outgrown something, when part of you has walked ahead, and the rest is only now catching up. You rarely notice it as it happens. You notice it weeks later when you realize you quit doing something and can't even remember when. Pay attention when that happens, because it means the harder next sign is probably already on its way, and it's the one that tends to arrive in the strangest place. Sign number 5. The right people start showing up, not the people you expected, not the contacts you carefully hunted down. Someone you met almost by accident, who turned out to matter enormously, a conversation that wandered somewhere unexpected and cracked a door open, a connection you couldn't have engineered if you'd tried. When your energy has pointed steadily in one direction for a long time, the people around you tend to start reflecting that direction back. You begin bumping into people who belong to where you're going, not where you've been. Call it confirmation that something's in motion, or just call it what naturally happens when you stay in earnest, consistent movement. Either way, if the right people have been appearing lately in ways that feel a little too convenient, don't shrug it off. The next sign is one hardly anyone brings up, and it might be the most revealing of them all. Sign number 6. Your dreams have turned vivid. You wake up jolted, spending the first few seconds trying to reassemble whatever just happened behind your eyes. The images are strange. The feelings hang around long after you're up. This isn't ordinary dreaming, and you know it. During real internal transition, your subconscious is doing heavy lifting, processing the weight of your effort, the tug of war between hope and doubt, the slow work of becoming someone slightly different than you were. Most of that doesn't get handled while you're awake. It gets handled in the dark, while you sleep. Cultures all over the world watched dream life closely as a marker of approaching change. And you don't need a mystical bone in your body to take the hint. If your nights have gotten louder, it may be echoing something that's very much alive inside you. What comes next is harder to put into words, but I promise you'll recognize it the second you hear it. Sign number 7. Something underneath the doubt still believes, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the frustration, beneath every completely reasonable argument you've stacked up for why this might not be working. There's something quieter down there. It doesn't fight the doubt. It doesn't try to win the argument. It just stays. That steady inner knowing is one of the most consistently reported experiences among people who eventually reached something that mattered. After a long, brutal stretch, they describe it as a thing that couldn't be talked out of them, even when every external fact said they should walk away. This isn't naivety, and it isn't denial. It might be the deepest form of self-trust there is, the kind you can only earn by actually surviving the effort. And the fact that it's still breathing in you, underneath all the noise, that means something. What comes after this is the sign most people misread as a problem. It isn't. Sign number 8. What used to motivate you doesn't anymore. The early fire is gone. That electric pull that dragged you into this in the first place has cooled, and some days, you honestly can't say what's still driving you. You keep showing up, but the old fuel is nowhere to be found. It can feel like a loss. Try it from another angle. The motivation that starts things is almost always powered by novelty. It's loud and bright and barely needs any discipline because the excitement carries you. When that burns off and you keep going anyway, you've crossed into something else, something quieter, steadier, a lot harder to knock over. That shift from excitement into plain, unshakable resolve tends to show up right before results finally start to land. What feels like losing your passion may be the exact moment your commitment got serious. The next sign catches people completely off guard because it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like a relief you're not sure you've earned. Sign number 9. You get moments of unexplained peace. They're brief. Sometimes just a few seconds. You're deep in a hard season, and then, out of nowhere, the pressure eases. Something settles in your chest. It doesn't last, and it fixes nothing practical, but for one strange beat, everything feels okay. These moments tend to arrive when some part of you has started to trust the road, before your thinking mind has signed off on it. Your nervous system knows, somewhere below the analysis, that even in all this difficulty, you're pointed at something real. So, don't dismiss them as wishful thinking. That quiet, causeless calm shows up again and again in the way people describe the weeks right before things turned. Not loud, not dramatic, just those odd little windows where something inside finally exhaled. And then there's the last one. This is the sign that stays with people. because it holds all the others inside it. Sign number 10, you can't actually quit. Even though part of you wants to, you're tired, you're frustrated. The case for walking away basically writes itself. And yes, part of you has thought about it, maybe more than once. But when you sit with the idea of really stopping, something in you plants its feet. Not out of stubbornness, not out of ego, just a quiet, stubborn certainty that you're not done. That, whatever this is, it still matters too much to set down. That inability to genuinely quit when quitting would be logical, when nobody on earth would blame you, is one of the clearest signals there is. Because effort that outlives its own excitement, that survives the collapse of easy motivation, that keeps moving through long, invisible stretches, is exactly the kind of effort that comes right before real change. You're not still standing here by accident. Notice that none of these look like progress. That's the whole point. The exhaustion, the friction, the doubt, the fading fire taken one at a time, every single one could pass for a reason to stop. But line them up together, and they describe something very specific, a person who's been inside something real long enough that it's started to change them from the inside out. And that inner change almost always shows up before the outer one becomes visible to anyone else. Remember the question we opened with, what if all of this has been leading somewhere the entire time? Nobody can hand you a date. No one can tell you the exact hour things will finally turn, and it'd be dishonest to pretend otherwise. But the people who keep going through the tiredness, the small daily failures, the long silent stretches where nothing seems to move, those are the ones who eventually look back and realize the turning point never announced itself. It slipped in quietly, on an ordinary afternoon, in the middle of a season that, from the outside, looked like nothing at all. So, if more than a few of these felt uncomfortably familiar, don't file it away as coincidence. That's a pattern, and it's one worth trusting. Keep going.